The Seattle Seahawks have a new head coach. They have hired Baltimore Ravens defensive coordinator Mike McDonald, who's going to be replacing the legendary Pete Carroll. This is a really interesting decision for Seattle, because it will start going into this hiring process that they wanted a head coach who had experience and was going to be able to maintain the energy and the atmosphere that Pete Carroll brought to the team. Mike McDonald, I want to call him McDaniel, but Mike McDonald is the youngest head coach in the NFL right now, with this job being taken by him. He's 36 years old, and he's risen up the ranks really fast. He spent nearly a decade on the Baltimore Ravens staff. He started back in 2014 as an intern and worked his way up from defensive backs coach to linebackers coach, and then he was the defensive coordinator for Michigan in 2021, and then the last 2 seasons that he's been in Baltimore, he's revolutionized that Ravens defense. And Mike McDonald gets a lot of comparisons to Sean McVay. He's not an offensive-minded coach. He's a defensive-minded coach. And for what a lot of people say about him, he's the Sean McVay of defensive coordinators. And there's a very good reason why people say this about him. You look at what he did with the Ravens defensively this year. Kyle Hamilton played at a high level. You had Jadeveon Clowney, who pretty much had the best season of his NFL career. Justin Madubuike was an all-pro. There were so many players on this Ravens defense that benefited from playing under Mike McDonald's scheme. Seattle, their biggest problem under Pete Carroll the last couple of years, or pretty much since Richard Sherman and Cam Chancellor and the Legion of Boom, or Doom, whatever it was called, disassembled, has been the defense. And they haven't really been able to get it right. You have so many young, talented players on the defense side of the football, like Devon Witherspoon, Boye Mafe, Jordan Brooks, who have been underutilized because they haven't been put in the proper scheme. Seattle, landing a guy like Mike McDonald is definitely going to pay dividends to how good this defense is going to be under him, now that you have somebody who knows how to get the most out of the young pieces that they have on that side of the football. Hell, if they keep Jamal Adams, if he can find a way to use Kyle Hamilton, there's no reason why he shouldn't be able to get Jamal Adams playing back to the level that we used to see him playing at when he was with the New York Jets. Right now, Jamal Adams has been a massive disappointment since the Seattle Seahawks have traded up for him, and they gave up a lot to get this dude. Maybe Mike McDonald can save Jamal Adams' career and resurrect his career like he was able to do with guys like Jadeveon Clowney. This is also somebody that has a really unique personality. When you think about Pete Carroll, this was somebody who was always on the move. It was hard for him to sit down. He was warming up, practicing with the players. Mike McDonald is more of a introverted guy, but he's still a very good leader. And with how smart and innovative of a football mind he is, it's going to be really exciting if you're a Seahawks fan to think about how good Seattle's defense is going to be year one under him. Your defense has been terrible for like damn near a decade. You shouldn't have that same problem with this dude being your head coach. Who's going to be your offensive coordinator? Who's going to be your quarterback? It's the biggest question. Is he going to be able to hire the right offensive coordinator? He doesn't come from a Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan coaching tree, so there's not just a guy that he has hanging in the background that he's cool with, that he knows that we can have confidence in. And Geno Smith, he probably should still be the starter next season, but it probably will be in your best interest to find his potential successor in the draft. And the problem that's going to arise is that you're going to have to probably trade up if you want one of the more premium quarterbacks in the draft, such as a Drake May or Caleb Williams or even Jaden Daniels. You could get Michael Penix, Bo Nix, maybe a Spencer Rattler falls into your lap if you don't want to trade up. But this whole notion that defensive coaches don't make good head coaches and it's hard to win in today's NFL if you don't have an offensive-minded coach is not true to me. Yes, there are offensive-minded coaches taking over the league, but like we seen with the Miko Ryans down there in Houston, if you get quarterback and the offensive coordinator right, you can have success as a defensive-minded head coach. The problem is that these Mike Tomlins of the world, the Robert Salas, they don't have an eye for quarterback or for hiring decent OCs. Mike McDonald, if he can not make the mistake that the rest of these defensive coaches make, this can be a fantastic hire by Seattle. When you're getting called the Sean McVay of defensive coaches, you just don't get that praise just thrown out there about you without a good reason. There is a lot of respect for what Mike McDonald has done in the short time that he's been in the NFL. And when you rise up through the ranks this quickly, this young, that shows that there's something special about you in terms of what you do from a schematic standpoint and how you're able to get the most out of the players in your scheme. This isn't a Brandon Staley situation. Brandon Staley was only the head coach for the Chargers for a few seasons, and he was fairly inexperienced. He was not qualified for the job, and he only spent one season as the DC for the Rams. Mike McDonald doesn't have that same background that Brandon Staley had. He's been with the Ravens for a very long time. He went to Michigan for that one season because John Harbaugh gave him to his brother Jim Harbaugh, and they kind of swapped like coaches on their staffs pretty much. And then once Jim Harbaugh got done with him, he gave him right back to John Harbaugh, and the Ravens defense was the only thing that showed up in the AFC Championship. I'm sorry. This defense was lights out in the playoffs, and with what Seattle has defensively, it's going to be really scary to think about what Mike McDonald is going to be able to do with the talent that they have on that side of the ball. And they got talent on offense too. Seattle has one of the best young rosters in the National Football League. This is a team that doesn't need a rebuild. If Mike McDonald ends up panning out as the right hire for Seattle, they could be in contention for the NFC Championship as soon as next season. This is already a pretty made roster. They got a good offensive line, 2 young tackles, Charles Cross, Abraham Lucas, good receivers, stout running backs. Quarterback isn't too bad. Like, Geno Smith can suffice if you can't do better, but if you bring in a young guy, I don't think quarterback is going to be a means to an end for Seattle next year in terms of, oh, it's going to be terribly bad. You should still be able to get a little bit of juice out of Geno Smith. And with better coaching, if you make a Grand Slam offensive coordinator hire, this can be a hire that we look back upon a year from now and say this was the best hire by any other team in this cycle. And I believe that it is. I'm a big fan of this hire. The hiring of Mike McDonald by Seattle right now ranks number 1 for me. In terms of who I believe is going to be the most successful head coach outside of Jim Harbaugh, who is unproven yet, I got to go with Mike McDonald. This is an incredible hire by the Seattle Seahawks.